Hi, my name is Carlos, and I'm your tourist guide in critical theory. First of all, thank you for enlisting in the course. I can assure you that you have invested your time wisely. Critical theory is an exciting course, and my job is to show you why it is so. So what is critical theory? Did I introduce myself as a tourist guide? You bet I did. If you love to travel, critical theory can be compared to the romance of voyaging through exciting lands. What country excites you the most? Is it Spain? Is it in the north of Spain, in Barcelona, to stroll along the shaded walks of Las Ramblas? Or is it in the south, in Andalusia, to dance the tabla in the streets of Seville? Or would you rather visit London itself, heart of the British Isles? London makes us glad to be alive. When a man is tired of London, wrote Samuel Johnson, he is tired of life. Or would you prefer to visit Northern Ireland with its mist-covered countryside and 19th century air? How about Germany? Why don't we visit Königsberg, where Immanuel Kant spent his whole life? His house is on the right of the picture. Immanuel Kant was a colossus in philosophical thought and a man of incredibly regular habits. His daily schedule was as regular as a regular verb, to the effect that housewives at Königsberg would set their watches as he went on his daily walk. We will visit these places and more. We will visit the past. We will go to ancient Greece. Athens in the classical period, the golden age that gave the ancient world its monuments in art, philosophy, and architecture. We shall visit Plato's academy, where two of the greatest minds, Plato and Aristotle, discussed the theory of forms. We will visit ancient Rome, where Augustus Caesar, patron of Virgil, made possible through Mycenas the writing of Ars Poetica by Horace. Later, we shall visit the Royal Library of Alexandria, founded by Aristotle's pupil Alexander the Great, and flourished under the Ptolemies, that dynasty that gave birth to that beauteous serpent of the Nile, Cleopatra. Well, literary works are like exotic places we love to visit. To maximize the benefits of your trip, it is best that you travel with an experienced tourist guide. Let me be your literary tourist guide. A good tourist guide will tell you what you should look for. A good tourist guide will provide you with a map, an itinerary, so to speak. Critical theory is no different from the tourist trade in that it brings order to our experience of the places we love to visit, and in our case, literary works. Is there one correct interpretation of a literary work? Well, just as there is no one best place to view the breathtaking Banawe rice terraces, so there is no one best reading of a literary work. Endorsing variety, however, doesn't mean that all opinions are equal. We may marvel at the rice terraces from the viewpoints, but we need not have to agree that all vantage points are satisfying to all. Some are better than others, but then better for whom? Better for what? I personally prefer to be overwhelmed by the panoramic view of the terraces, but you may be impressed by the skillfully devised irrigation system built thousands of years ago by our ancestors, the great Igorot race, in the absence of modern machineries. Theory is difficult because it makes us think. Literary theory undermines reading as an innocent activity. It forces us to examine closely our assumptions. It makes explicit what is implied. We may define critical theory as the deeper investigation into the nature of an activity. Let me explain. All human activity has a theory. Even the theory of basketball has been thoroughly inquired into. No discourse about literature is theory-free. Even your simple act of literary response, such as "this book is boring," depends on a theoretical stance. The assumption that the purpose of literature is to entertain, and the critic's job is to identify a work that fails this test. When you watch a movie, for example, and tell your friends, "this is boring," that is a theoretical stance. It assumes that a movie must entertain, and your statement as a movie critic has just identified a specific movie that failed your test. But when asked why the movie is boring, how many of us simply shrug our shoulders and say, I don't know, just because, secret, basta. Or if we like the movie, how many of us describe it simply as nice? An overused word, you describe almost anything, from the movie is nice, the weather is nice, the food is nice, my boyfriend is nice. After this course, we will be able to articulate your statement and the elements that make up a good movie, a good book, a good weather, a good boyfriend. Am I right, Jane? Critical theory, therefore, eschews reading as an innocent activity. So, why study theory? For the same reasons that we read literature: to broaden our horizons, to sharpen our perspectives, to make us more alert, more observant, more perceptive, and most especially to bring this keenness and right values into every department of our lives. This course provides that habit of mind that will stand you in good stead in your chosen profession, be it law, medicine, business, public administration, and science. Anyway, earlier I promised you that I will provide you with a map, so to speak, a map of our critical itinerary. So here's your brochure with a rundown of the main sections that will make up our study. Part 1. The Classical Foundation. This section will discuss the difference between Plato and Aristotle in their concepts of mimesis. Part 2 is Medieval Aesthetics. This section will study the Neoplatonic school of Plotinus, the semiotics of St. Augustine, the hermeneutics of St. Thomas Aquinas, and the Platonic distrust of poets by Boethius. Part 3 is Renaissance and Neoclassical criticism. Here we shall discuss Sir Philip Sidney's Apology for Poetry. Part 4 is German Epistemological Roots. This is the most difficult but the most rewarding of the modules. Here we shall take up Edmund Burke's Inquiry into the Sublime and the Beautiful to prepare ourselves before we dive into Immanuel Kant's Critique of Judgment. Next, we shall take up Schiller's Letters on the Aesthetic Education of Man, and then we shall discuss Hegel's Philosophy of Fine Art, which traces the Geist as it travels into concrete form through the symbolic, the classical, and the romantic. Finally, in Part 5, entitled The Romantic Imagination, we shall take up the great Romantic poets William Wordsworth, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Percy Bysshe Shelley, and John Keats, who were poets first before they were critics. Critical theory is difficult. You will encounter terms which may not be too familiar, but nothing is difficult if you have an experienced tourist guide. Take the word defamiliarization, for example. Wordsworth said that too often we take for granted familiar people and things because their very commonness has rendered them invisible. But instead of writing of unfamiliar things, he would take his subject matter from nature, from the common everyday world of the countryside. He would deal with people and things familiar, the farmers, people we often overlook because of their commonness. And then he would throw over them a poetic insight that would make us see them in a new light, endowed with dignity. More, by lending these people and things a charm of novelty, he would evoke a sense of childlike wonder and make us see them as if for the first time. Consider these sunflowers. How many times have you passed by sunflowers and never noticed them? But when an artist like Vincent van Gogh, for example, paints a sunflower, suddenly you say, by golly, I never really did see a sunflower before. Defamiliarization opens our eyes to the wonders of the world, whose mystery is lost due to familiarity. Before we end this introductory lecture, why don't we pay Mr. William Wordsworth a visit to his cottage in northwestern England, the home where he wrote most of his immortal poems. Or better still, why don't we join him and his famous neighbor Coleridge in their regular walk along the Lake District and experience the trees and the sky through the eyes of a child, experiencing the thrill of seeing as if for the first time those daffodils over there, which inspired Wordsworth to write, I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Welcome to Critical Theory.